Welcome to Real Talk. I'm your host, Tori Champa, and we are back with our second season. And this year, we're going to be bringing you a variety of different segments, including entertainment news, as well as reviews of other types of media, including television shows and music videos. So let's get started. This week, we're going to be reviewing movies that came out over the summer, including Maleficent, Lucy, Guardians of the Galaxy, and How to Train Your Dragon 2. So let's get started. The first film we're going to be reviewing today is Maleficent, starring Angelina Jolie and Elle Fanning, and it's a rewrite of the Disney original Sleeping Beauty, but from the point of view of the villain.
Curious little beastie. Bring her to me.
I know you're there. Don't be afraid.
I am not afraid.
Then come out.
Then you'll be afraid.
So the three things we're going to be reviewing today for Maleficent are the acting, the script, and the makeup. The acting overall was excellent, and it was nice to see Dakota Fanning's younger sister, who is Elle Fanning, in such a major and iconic role. I feel a lot of the time that she does get overshadowed by Dakota Fanning, but she's a great actress on her own terms, and this definitely showed it off. The star, though, and to no surprise, ends up being Angelina Jolie for one scene in particular, which this is a little bit of a spoiler. She ends up getting her wings ripped off by the man that she loves, and it's definitely supposed to be a metaphor for rape. And Angelina Jolie plays it so intensely and emotionally that as an audience member, you have to turn away because you become so full of emotion and so uncomfortable that you can't watch. And that is definitely the sign of a great actress. The second thing that we're going to review is the script. And personally, and I think a lot of other people felt this way, Maleficent seems to be Disney trying to make Wicked, the Broadway musical, without having the rights to Wicked. It follows the exact same format of taking this original piece of work and turning it on its head and making it from the point of view of a misunderstood villain. And I think this is one of the reasons I personally liked the film so much, is I hate The Wizard of Oz, but I love Wicked. And I hate Sleeping Beauty, but I loved Maleficent. This pushed aside because I know a lot of people didn't like this film because they prefer Maleficent as evil as she was in Sleeping Beauty. The script overall is excellent. There are no major plot holes, and it's fluid, and it flows very nicely. Final thing that we're going to review is the makeup, and this is probably one of the biggest highlights of the film. They were able to make Angelina Jolie's eyes this very haunting and intense color that is not at all natural. And they kept it completely consistent throughout the entire film, and it just pierced into the viewer's eyes, basically, and it really added to the intensity of her character. And it ended up being something that was subtle, but one of the greatest parts of the film. The final verdict is this is definitely a film that you should rent once it comes out on DVD, and I know that a lot of people didn't like it because they prefer Maleficent as the villain from Sleeping Beauty, but if you don't like Sleeping Beauty, then I can guarantee you'll love this film. The second film that we're going to be reviewing today is Lucy, starring Scarlett Johansson and Morgan Freeman, and it centers around a woman who, due to an unfortunate drug-related incident, is now able to access more of her brain than previously thought humanly possible.
Most human beings only use 10% of their brain's capacity. Imagine if we could access 100%. Interesting things begin to happen. Yes?
Professor Norman, my name's Lucy. I just read all your research on the human brain. It's a little rudimentary, but you're on the right track.
Thank you.
I have access to 28% of my cerebral capacity. I can feel every living thing.
So the three things we're going to review today for Lucy are the acting, the script, and the choreography. The acting ends up being the highlight of the film, with Scarlett Johansson as the star. She doesn't have a lot to work with because unfortunately the script is pretty terrible, but she's still able to take this character and allow them to transform from the beginning of the film to the end of the film pretty nicely. Second thing that we're going to review is the script, which, as I said, was pretty horrible. It couldn't really decide if it wanted to be an action film or a scientific piece. It would go from these over-the-top fight scenes to all of a sudden switching to Morgan Freeman giving a lecture about the science behind the film, and it was very jarring for the audience, and it took you out of the element of the film. The final thing that we're going to review is the choreography, which, much like the script, was bad. It had these over-the-top fight scenes, as I mentioned, that were supposed to be taken seriously, but they were so over the top that you couldn't. It wasn't quite like a Quentin Tarantino film where in Kill Bill it was supposed to be reminiscent of the martial arts Japanese films with the purposefully bad fight scenes. These fight scenes were supposed to be taken seriously, but were so over the top with her beating up multiple men and flipping tables that were flying across the room that the audience just could not take it seriously. The final verdict, this is definitely a film that you can skip. So the next film we're going to review is Guardians of the Galaxy, starring a pretty large and well-rounded cast, headed by Chris Pratt, and it's about a bunch of misfits that must band together to save the universe. So the three things we're going to be reviewing for Guardians of the Galaxy are the acting, the script, and the special effects. I do have to put a disclaimer with this review because we have very differing opinions on this film here at Real Talk. Maddie Torres loved the film, while I personally thought it was really nothing that special. But I am going to be giving the opinions of both of us in this review. The first thing we're going to review is the acting, which this is a point where we can agree on because we both thought the cast was well-rounded and everyone did a nice job playing this diverse group of characters. We do have a differing opinion, however, on who was the star of the film, whether it was Chris Pratt, who played Star-Lord, or Bradley Cooper, who was the voice of Rocket Raccoon. Chris Pratt does a nice job playing a character who has a very shady past and starts off almost in a villainous type role that rises to the occasion to lead this band of misfits to saving the universe, while Bradley Cooper, only using his voice, is able to bring this character to life so well that for a while you start to believe that Rocket is actually real. The second thing I'm going to review is the script, which is where our biggest difference in opinions occurs. I personally don't think the film was as funny as the writers intended it to be, and I think that it was overly hyped. Well, Maddie Torres believes that it was extremely well done, and the example that she uses is that they were able to take a character like Groot, who only says 4 words in the entire film, and make him so likable, which I agree is a sign of good writing, and I think that was a highlight of the script. I think a lot of the jokes fell flat, and that was a turnoff for me. The final thing that we're going to review is the special effects, which we both agreed were phenomenal. It's easy to tell that a lot of the environment that these characters are in happens to be CGI, and at no point were there any hiccups or holes in it that made it seem bad or took the audience out of the moment. The action scenes especially were very well done, and this is probably one of Marvel's best films when it comes to CGI and special effects. The final verdict, we both agree that you probably should see this film. How many times is a difference that we think? I think you could see it once just so you know what everyone's talking about. Maddie Torres could probably see it for the rest of her life, and she does think this is one of Marvel's greatest, so we'll leave the decision up to you. So the final film we're going to review today is How to Train Your Dragon 2, starring Jay Baruchel and America Ferrera, and it's a sequel to the 2010 film How to Train Your Dragon, and this time the main character of Hiccup must not only save his home village of Burke, but all dragons as well.
Life here is amazing. Dragons used to be a bit of a problem, but now they've all moved in.
Did I tell you that you look amazing today? Because you do.
And with Vikings on the backs of dragons, the world just got a whole lot bigger.
So the 3 things we're going to review for How to Train Your Dragon 2 are the acting, or voice acting in this instance, the script, and the animation. The acting, much like the first film, was well-rounded, and everyone did a nice job conveying the emotions of their individual characters, and the star ends up being Jay Baruchel as the main character of Hiccup. Hiccup in both films is extremely emotional, has a lot of internal and external conflict, and Jay Baruchel does a nice job portraying this in his voice, and it fits the character excellently. The second thing that we're going to review is the script, and this ends up being the downfall of the film. The entirety of the film builds up and builds up and builds up to this great climax that happens within the last 10 minutes of the film, and then the film just ends. It would have been a lot better had this climax occurred in the middle of the film and there was more resolution at the end, because you almost left the theater feeling that there was no closure and feeling unsatisfied. So had they moved this big event a little bit more toward the middle with a little bit more of a tail at the end of the film, it probably would have been a lot better. And this suffers a lot from the idea that sequels are just not as good as the original. The final thing that we're going to review is the animation, which there was something off about, but it's very difficult to pinpoint. The overall animation on the wide shots and mass shots were great and looked just as good as the first, but there was something with close-ups of the characters' faces, that it was almost as if the faces of the characters were moving faster than the world around them. With their eyebrows and their mouths and the expressions they were making, the animation was just off. And it was uncomfortable at some points to see these close-ups of these characters because of that. The final verdict, if you saw the first film, you'll probably want to see this, but you will probably be disappointed. This got great reviews across the board, and I think as a separate entity, it's great, but as a sequel to the 2010 film, which was excellent, it really is a letdown. So as I mentioned earlier, a new segment that we have this season is a review of other forms of media, not just film. So on this week's segment, we're going to be reviewing the season openers of South Park, Gravity Falls, as well as the crossover episode of Family Guy and The Simpsons.
Look, don't you see that when you call your organization the Washington Redskins, it's offensive to us?
How is it offensive?
It's derogatory, Mr. Cartman. It makes us feel like a joke.
Guys, I have total respect for you. When I named my company Washington Redskins, it was out of deep appreciation for your team and your people.
South Park, as many of you know, revolves around the misadventures of 4 completely politically incorrect elementary schoolers, and the season 18 opener was no different. Poking fun at social topics such as the Ray Rice scandal, the renaming of the Washington Redskins, and Kickstarter, it followed the format of every other South Park episode. Overall, it was a pretty strong opener, and we are definitely looking forward to the rest of the season, though a couple of the jokes did fall flat. Personally, the idea of poking fun at the Washington Redskins probably would have better served as a B-plot rather than the main premise of the episode, but still, pretty decent opener, and we're definitely looking forward to more. Though Gravity Falls is a show that airs on Disney Channel, as well as its associated channel Disney XD, it definitely has humor more aimed toward adults, and is a very underrated show, and it's personally one of my favorites. It centers around Dipper and his twin sister Mabel as they stay at their uncle's tourist attraction in the mysterious town of Gravity Falls. The season 2 opener does a nice job summarizing what had happened in the previous finale, while also introducing a great story arc for the rest of the season, and we are eagerly awaiting the next coming episodes, because every episode since the opener has been just as good.
Hey, couldn't help but notice there's no seat for me.
Oh, I was under the impression that you were a dog.
You're right to have that reaction, Marge.
Why, I just figured at home I sit with the family, so I assumed that...
Have you ever drunk out of a toilet?
I don't see what that has to do with the discussion.
Dogs eat in the kitchen.
Yeah, dogs eat in the kitchen.
You know you're eating mostly horse hooves and tallow, right?
As 2 of the most iconic adult cartoons in the history of television, I don't think a summarization of Family Guy or The Simpsons is needed. That being said, the fact that they're so iconic is the reason this was such a disappointment. It was great that they made references to both shows and that there was confusion over what Peter was talking about or what Homer was talking about to the other one because they were references, but this did not need to be a full hour. It was years in the making and only took an hour to completely destroy. There was very little plot, and what plot there was could have been resolved in a half an hour. And honestly, this probably would have been fine as a half an hour special. But it was so clearly just an attempt to gain ratings from both of these shows that are struggling in their later years as better adult-oriented cartoons are coming out, that it just fell completely flat and was one big advertising campaign. That being said, I really hope Family Guy and The Simpsons picks up and gets better with the more episodes they get into the seasons, because if this is how they're starting off both of their seasons, they're really going to have a hard time getting ratings. Another new segment we're going to be doing this season on Real Talk is an overview of 3 of the top stories in the entertainment world. First one is Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher's new baby, which they have named Wyatt. Which originally I thought Wyatt not really as a girl's name. I've actually grown kind of fond of it. It's cute, it's original, and it is definitely 1,000 times better than naming their baby Apple or North. Taylor Swift, in entertainment news, was seen wearing a No It's Becky shirt, which to most people would mean absolutely nothing, but it is a reference to a Tumblr thread from a couple years ago, and she has effectively broken the internet. And while it seems completely useless and not really that important, it is very funny to any Taylor Swift fans and any Tumblr fans. In television news, Yvette Nicole Brown has announced that she is leaving Community, which is a huge upset as it's being picked up for its 6th season by Yahoo. It really goes to show the show may not last much longer. You've already had Chevy Chase leave, and you've had Donald Glover leave, and now you have one of the original and main characters leaving as well. It's really going to question how much longer Community is going to last. As you may have noticed, there is a hat by my side, which is a reference to Gravity Falls, one of the shows I mentioned earlier in our review. Every week from now on, we're going to be placing various objects from different forms of media, television shows, movies, and if you'd like to venture a guess as to what they are from, feel free to comment on our Facebook posts. Final verdict on the films that we reviewed: Maleficent is one you should definitely check out. Lucy you can completely skip. Guardians of the Galaxy is one you should probably see just to know what the hype's about. And How to Train Your Dragon 2, only seen if you've seen the first one. I'm your host, Tori Ciampa, and this has been Real Talk, and thanks for watching.